Okay, I'm Denise Whittaker, and I am a terracotta clay sculptor, and I've been sculpting here for 25 years. And here in this studio is where this process begins. So what I work with is I start with a 25-pound block of red clay, and from there I start building a structure. But before we start that, we have a model that comes and stands on this pedestal, and we figure out a pose, and it usually takes us quite a while to think about it. Once he's set up, we tape him in, and then many of us sculpt, but some of us just start freehanding. So I always sculpt to put the imprint in my mind. I always sketch to put the imprint in my mind, and then I begin. And so I usually take a piece of clay and I start pounding it out to make a base, which I will show you. This is just the remains of one bag. So when it's fired, it comes out red like this, but it starts out like this. And usually we make a base because as the clay settles, the piece starts to shrink. So anyway, it's a really hands-on, you gotta love to get dirty. So I will a lot of times pound it out to maybe about, depending on the size that I do. Some pieces are, you take your measurements and you cut it in half, cut it in thirds, and then you start only sculpting what you see. And as the time goes by, every 10 minutes, we move our model and we only sculpt what we see. So it's like drawing in a sense, but with the clay. So as soon as I have this sort of the way I like, I will start looking at the model and go from this sketch or these sketches, and then start building from the ground up, which, 25 pounds. And some of the pieces can be 50, 100. And you kind of try to hollow them out as you go because the weight is extensive. It's a lot of fun. It's like dough, cutting it so that you have a platform to work on. Anyway, so then from here, I'm just going to sort of do the beginning of it because this process can take 15, 18 hours to get from the smallest piece to a moderate, medium size, or a large piece. So this is just the foundation of it, to kind of show you that it takes such a long time to produce something that looks like one of these that are around me. I use these metal poles to give me support when I'm building, because as I said, things start to settle and then you've lost the dimension of your piece. You've already seen me at the first stages of sculpting, and now we come to the next 2 through 10 steps, but this one is the raw clay that has been sitting for about 2 weeks until it gets to this very dry stage. And at that point, it goes to the kiln where it's fired. And after 24 hours, it's been in the kiln and it's cooled. We are then able to bring a piece like this home. And at that point, we have lots of repairs to do to it, which at this time I will fill the pieces with Bondo or water putty, and the next step is finishing, where you will use several different types of sandpaper, and you will sand off the pieces that sort of stand out and are sharp. This process, it takes quite a while because, as you can see, there are several flaws in here. And then after that's completely done, you end up with something quite smooth like this, because this is the finish that I wanted on that. Some of these have more of a fabric texture. And from this point, I'm ready to do my patinas and my finishes. And I'm inspired by color, but of course I love to incorporate color with the bronze. So I'm just going to show you how this goes through a quick stage. So I've already done one layer, which I use this oxidizing bronze paint. And it's best if you use your gloves because it will start turning your fingernails black. But from that point, I will go ahead and paint the second coat after this first one is dried. And while it's still wet, this takes, it works really beautifully, very quickly. Many of my patinas I create myself, but I happened upon this, and it really takes on a different finish. So anyway, now I'm taking my the patina. It's an acid, and you start putting it on while it's wet, and it will almost immediately start transforming. As you can see, this is a green patina. So as you can see, it's already starting to do its magic. And wherever it drips or what, as it starts to dry, all of a sudden it really looks like a piece of metal. And so when that's completely dry, it will start to look like this piece over here. So when we finish this patina, we let it dry. And this comes out like this, but it'll be much stronger, and I, at that point, will keep using my cloths to dab, rub. From there, believe it or not, shoe polish. Shoe polish, either in the neutral or a little bit of a brown, will be my finishing technique. At that point, I'm able to high and low take off what I don't like, and I end up with this finish, which a lot of people find it hard to believe that it is not a bronze. And how I incorporate the color, because I'm passionate about color, and also getting the bronze in. So I think it's a wonderful technique. So from there, you know, the final stage is the polishing of the shoe polish and then buffing it up. So that's one finish, and then here's another finish. This is one that I create myself, which is sort of a Rodin finish, and it's with Payne's Gray, and that's a combination of blue and black, ultramarine blue and black, and then I paint a couple coats of that on here, and once that's dry, I will do a wash of burnt sienna or raw sienna, watered down, and keep applying and rubbing away until I find definition in the piece. And once that's like completely dried after a few days, then again, I take out my trusty shoe polish and will polish up the high edges of, or the sides of each piece till it gives it some exciting dimension. I've never had any formal training in art as a child, just exposed to different forms of theater and museums, etc. But at 17, I was taking an art class for my senior year graduation, and our first assignment was to do a portrait of the person sitting directly across from us. And when I completed the portrait, my teacher came behind me and seemed astounded, and it was an exact replication or drawing of the girlfriend sitting across from me. And from that point, she called me aside and she was so encouraging and told me that she felt that I really had something there and that I should pursue this for, studies. But I had never done anything in art, and I thought, my goodness. But 7 or 8 months later, I was at LSU, and my majors were fine arts and foreign language. And from that point, I took every course that I could. And although everyone else in my studios were people that had been studying art since they were children, I was such a neophyte. I had never touched a paintbrush, or looked at canvases, or worked with oils or acrylics. But my professors were all very encouraging me to just do it, see it. So I did very well through college, and I was just about to start my junior year, and I had this idea that I wanted to absolutely be a professional artist, a fashion designer or something in that mode. And so my father, he thought that was absolutely nonsense, and he was not going to have a child of his sitting in Jackson Square in New Orleans, which is where I'm from, and drawing pictures of people with no future ahead. So he set up an appointment with me to interview with he was a commercial artist, he had a fashion designing section to his company, and he happened to be a very good friend of my father's. And my father encouraged him to tell me that it was I had talent, but not enough, and it wasn't a future that I should pursue. So that was pretty discouraging. But my father decided I needed to have another career, and perhaps the airline industry would be great for me. So he had a lot of friends that were in the airline industry, and he encouraged me to apply for Delta Airlines. And I was 19 years old, still fine arts, foreign language major at LSU. But lo and behold, I was hired. And from that day forth, my art sort of took a backstage. And I went on to become a flight attendant with Delta, and my career was 46 years, 15 domestic and 31 international. I guess I was about 42 years old, and I had always loved art and had a catering business, flight attendant, mother of 3, fascinated by color, fashion, everything. I was invited to join a sculpting class with this very successful sculptor named George Davis, and I lived in Dallas, Fort Worth. And I attended this group, and lo and behold, the first thing I ever did was a bust. And this bust was an exact replica of the model. And George Davis was shocked. He said, "Look at this, Denise." And he even invited my husband to see it and said, "Look at this." And my very first piece, I must say, I couldn't believe I could do it. So I studied with him for about maybe 9 months, and then we moved to Colorado. Again, my art took a back seat to raising my family and getting acclimated to the lifestyle in Colorado. And then I was reading a newspaper article in Evergreen, Colorado, here in the city, and it was about this artist named Tom Ware. And he was a sculptor. And I thought, my goodness, maybe I should take my little portfolio or pictures over to him and see if I could maybe study with him, because I had never done three-dimensional art until I had started in Dallas, which was 2 years before, and only for 9 months. So it was an offshoot, but I went over there and sat down and talked with him, and he invited me to join his group. And it's called the Warehouse Gang. And it's not a class where you are taught. It is a class or a group of people that are artists that you're encouraged to learn from each other and sculpt what you see. And sculpting is like a form of drawing. You're drawing the outside, you're manipulating the outside lines of your model. So from there, 25 years later, I have been a sculptor here in Evergreen. And my dear Tom Ware, my mentor, passed away a couple years ago at 90, I want to say 92 or 93, which is amazing. And we all have been honored by his daughter to continue to create art, learn, study from each other at his home. So my life in sculpting continues. Yeah. So the people that, or artists that most influenced me were like Degas, Monet, Matisse, Henry Moore. I would see these artists and their work, and it would just inspire me. Some were Picasso even. You know, he was so contemporary, and I decided that I wanted to combine all those things into one. So a lot of my pieces reflect sort of my interpretation of a combination of all those people that I just love seeing their work. So I don't know actually what you would call my type of art, but probably interpretation, contemporary. You see a little bit of realism, but nothing is ever exact. And I think it's the way it should be, because no humans are perfect, you know, whether it's a third size, a half side, or fraction of what they are. As long as you, for me anyway, have a bit of a feel for anatomy, I start with slight sketching that I imprint in my mind, or I might measure, and then I don't know exactly where I'm going to go with it. Anyway, so I end up with pieces like, I don't know, you probably see my pieces around me where it's like, what is that, Degas? All of a sudden I saw the colors and the painting of his ballerinas, and I have different pieces like that. And then I decided to experiment with flesh tones. And a lot of my pieces, you'll see these very straight edges. And a lot of that was maybe a social statement, a juxtaposition of hard and soft, feminine and masculine. Take this piece. This piece probably was inspired by Degas, his ballet dancers and their dresses and skirts, and he would have a tinge of color in some things, but they were bronze. And I decided that I just love color and I wanted to experiment with flesh colors and things like that. So she is kind of contemporary in the sense that I am very attracted to straight lines and incorporating sort of it's a juxtaposition between hard and soft, feminine and masculine. So that's my girl here. This piece over here was inspired by a suggestion that we think about Chagall and do something that was autobiographical. And she is a serpent lady, and I have loved the water my whole life. Oceans, streams, rivers. And so this is a confusing piece to some people because here is our serpent girl, finished sort of bronze. And this was not done with the acid. This was done with probably 8 different layers of paint. And then she's sitting on a beautiful rainbow trout on a Persian carpet we've got starfish and conch shells and everything. And it's just my interpretation of who I am and what I thought this represented me as far as like a lover of the water. And that these pieces actually began my just passion that continued with fabrics and color and food, colors, things like that. This interpretation was more more realistic and a little bit exaggerated and not such hard edges or fantasy as in some of my pieces. And she is finished more like Rodin, and she does have the acid wash that she's been buffed and polished. So she for sure, people often think she's definitely a bronze piece. But I do get very detailed with hair and eyelids and fingernails, and people tease me about if I put the eyelashes in or not. So I was kind of proud of myself. I kept a little basic on this one. When I'm creating or finishing a piece in my studio, it takes me quite a long time to live with the piece before I decide whether I'm going to apply color or leave it more metal. But the things that get me going is I'm kind of manic. I work on, as you saw, in my studio, I will work on 2-3 pieces at the same time. I will have colors out, waxes out, acids out. I'm a mess. When I finish, I look like the mad scientist with my hair up, and my coat is always filled with paint from here and there, and my hands. It takes me about 2 days to get rid of the stains and everything. But I love classical music. It brings me peace, or rock and roll, whatever. But I'm inspired by craziness that gives me peace down there. My art has evolved in the sense that I feel so much more confident in what I complete and finish, and I don't question it. It's not something that I'm made to do. It's something that I just have to do inside. So that is how I've evolved, is the comfort and the confidence that, yes, I am always learning, always the student, but I believe in myself that I am an artist. And that's how I've evolved, is being confident in this expression. Just saying, as far as other mediums that I'd like to explore, I have often thought about going down to the botanic gardens and trying to take a course in illustration, botanical illustration. I'm fascinated with details and just looking at things and seeing that combination of colors that nature creates. But that I'd like to do. I'd also, even though I dabbled in oils 50 years ago, I would love to take something in portraiture. You know, I'd love to take a course where I could paint again. I don't have that feeling anymore. And I remember that with oils, they took forever and you could change them up, and that would be a wonderful experience. And then finally, I'd really like to go somewhere where I could once again wake up that ability to do realism, like busts of my family or people or actions in their faces that I'd like to capture. How would I want to be remembered? Well, I'd want to be remembered for my sense of humor and how passionate I am. I'm really devoted to things that I care about and love. And I think it's wonderful if my family or my dear friends think of me as being an artist. And I've created things that they enjoy. It's an honor to me when anyone purchases a piece of mine, or even my, not even, but especially my children, when they say, "Mom, can I please have this piece in my home?" It's the greatest honor, because you sometimes don't think that your children see you. So that's how I'd like to be remembered. Passionate, humorous, loving, creative, and artist.